Hey guys, this is Clinton Jeff from UnleashThePhones.com, and this is my review of the Nokia, Microsoft Lumia 535. Yep, now that Microsoft has acquired Nokia's handset division, this is the first Microsoft branded Nokia-less Lumia Windows phone so far. Now, even though this is the first Microsoft branded Windows phone, in essence it's everything that a Nokia Windows phone was like, just with a whole new brand. The Lumia 535 has the same budget specs as the Lumia 530, but as you can see, it's a much bigger phone and also has the front-facing camera from the Lumia 730. So is the Lumia 535 worth checking out? Here's what I think about the Microsoft Lumia 535. Alright, starting with design, the Lumia 535 looks a lot like the Lumia 530 and the Lumia 730, kind of combined into one strange little package that looks a lot like all the other affordable Lumia phones in this price range. But hey, it's a budget phone after all, so there isn't really a huge focus on design over here. But to make it look at least a little bit more unique than other phones in this price range, it comes in a whole bunch of bright colors. Or to be more specific, the removable back panel comes in a whole bunch of bright colors. Yes, the Lumia 535 comes in a choice of glossy orange or glossy green. There's also a matte black and a matte white color, and there's also a really nice matte cyan blue color, which isn't available here in India for some weird reason. As you can probably tell, I have the bright orange version to review, which looks way more brighter and fiery in person than it does on the camera. The glossy finish does make it a little bit slippery when it's brand new, but after a couple of days you do get used to the phone. The Lumia 535 measures 140 by 72 by 8.8 millimeters, which means compared to the Lumia 530, it's quite slim, and build quality is also pretty decent all around. There's a slight bit of give in the back panel, but it isn't too bad. That being said, it does feel more cheaper than the other Lumia phones in this price range, but I'm not sure if that's just because of the glossy back panel maybe. It also weighs 146 grams, so while it's not very lightweight, it isn't very heavy either. Speaking of which, while it's still a somewhat large phone, the 535 is still very easily usable with one hand. Even though it has a 5-inch screen, I still think it's a practical enough size to use. Yes, indeed, at the front there's a 5-inch QHD resolution LCD display, except the Q in this case is lowercase, which means it's just 960 by 540 pixels resolution. That equals a very low 220 ppi pixel density. So while the screen might be large for a phone in this price range, that pixel density is pretty bad. As a result, icons and text do look a bit pixelated on this large screen, but to its credit, at least the side bezels aren't that huge this time around. There is Corning Gorilla Glass used on this display, but to keep costs down, the Lumia 535 lacks an oleophobic coating, which means it tends to pick up fingerprints very easily. I don't know if you can tell right now on the camera, but there are a lot of fingerprints on the screen, and that's just in the time that I've been showing the phone off to you guys. So if you do buy this phone, just keep a note that you're going to be wiping that screen off a lot. The Lumia 535 also lacks all the fancy extra polarizing filters and layers that you will use on the more expensive Lumia phone screens. It's even lacking the clear black display technology, which enhances readability in bright sunlight. The 535 does come with a high brightness mode, which changes the contrast based on how bright it is outside. Still, it isn't very usable outdoors in sunny environments. I should also point out that the touch sensitivity on the Lumia 535 is a little bit low in my opinion. This can result in a couple missteps every now and then. I'm hoping this isn't a hardware related feature and maybe just might be fixed in a software update. Moving on, above the screen you have the Microsoft branding right over there with a centrally located earpiece, and you also have the 5 megapixel wide angle front facing camera, which I'll talk about later on. It's also worth noting that the 535 has a proximity sensor and an ambient light sensor hidden up here as well. This is great because these two sensors were missing on the Lumia 630, which costs more than the 535. Below the display you'll find no buttons or keys at all because the Lumia 535 uses on-screen navigation buttons. Similarly, on the left side there's no ports or keys whatsoever, but on the right side you'll find the screen lock key and the volume rocker buttons as well. These buttons are easy enough to find and use with no complaints at all. At the top you just have the low and 3.5mm audio jack, while at the bottom you just have the micro USB charging port. Coming to the back you find the 5 megapixel camera with a single LED flash and the Microsoft branding right there below it. There's also a tiny little loudspeaker grill towards the bottom. The camera lens does stand out a little bit, so I would be very careful while placing this on a flat surface if you don't want to scratch that lens. All in all, the Lumia 535 looks just like other affordable Lumia phones, just with Microsoft branding everywhere instead of the Nokia branding. Alright, let's talk about hardware. The Lumia 535 is powered by a quad-core 1.2 GHz Snapdragon 200 processor. That might be relatively slower than what's powering the Lumia 630 and the Lumia 730, but it's the same processor that's used on the smaller Lumia 530. Windows Phone is a really lightweight operating system, so it runs really smoothly even on this hardware. It's actually quite a testament that Windows Phone can run so well even on this kind of hardware. And given the choice, if the same hardware powered Android or Windows Phone, I would choose the Windows Phone. Of course, it does have its limits and there are times when the 535 is slightly sluggish to respond, but this only happens in situations where a large volume of data is being processed. For example, when you're loading a really large web page, or if you're opening up the music app and loading the entire list of songs that you have. So yeah, the 535 will not win any benchmark contests, nor does it claim to offer very high performance. Instead, what you get is a very acceptable level of performance for a phone in this price range, and it makes the Lumia 535 a very fun phone to use. You might not be able to run very intense games, at least not with a lot of frame drops, but the 535 can certainly handle your usual routine of apps from Twitter to Facebook to even Angry Birds. It's also worth mentioning that thankfully Microsoft chose to go with 1 GB of RAM on the 535, which is huge because the 530 just had a measly 512 MB of RAM. The healthy 1 GB of RAM means that the Lumia 535 can also handle apps better than the 530 can. That being said, there's only 8 GB of internal memory to use, and out of that only about 3.4 GB is available, which isn't really much, but thankfully there is a micro SD card slot as well in there. The retail package does not have a micro SD card, so I'd highly advise going out and buying a micro SD when you buy this phone. In terms of connectivity, there's no 4G support on the Lumia 535, but there is support for 3G. I also happen to have the dual SIM version of the phone, which has 2 separate caller buttons and messaging buttons for each of the 2 SIM cards. For more information on how Windows Phone handles dual SIM cards, you can check out my Lumia 630 review. Apart from that, there's Wi-Fi hotspot, Bluetooth 4.0, and there's even GPS. Unfortunately, there is no NFC or wireless charging though. Alright, coming to software, the Lumia 535 runs Lumia Denim, which is Windows Phone 8.1 Update 1 with Nokia's firmware on top of it. Of course, now Nokia being Microsoft Mobile. I've already detailed out Windows Phone 8.1 and Lumia Denim in my Lumia 730 review. The Lumia Denim update brings a lot of cool features to high-end Lumia phones, but it doesn't really do much for budget Lumia phones. So there are no real new features apart from a faster Lumia camera app. Apart from that, Windows Phone 8.1 Update 1 brings support for folders, so you can dump all of your shortcuts into one nice little folder, which will make your home screen look a lot neater. There's also now a notification center with 4 toggles at the top. Just like the Lumia 730, the 535 also has virtual buttons which automatically hide when it goes into full screen apps, but like on the Lumia 730, you can just swipe upwards to get those navigation buttons back. Apart from that, you can also now see actual battery percentage and the notification tray, and there's also now separate volume buttons for the ringer and media as well. Also, if you're using the Lumia 535 in a supported area, you will be able to get Cortana support. Cortana isn't supported in India right now, so you just get normal Bing search instead. Of course, enabling Cortana is very easy, and I'll leave a link to the guide in the description below. But apart from that, it's basically the same user interface as on the Lumia 530 and the Lumia 630 and 730. Coming to messaging, typing on the Lumia 535 is actually really easy thanks to that nice large screen. There are also toggles to switch between the SIM cards in case you buy the dual SIM version, and you can always just swipe between letters to type, which is actually really cool. Apart from that, there's a whole bunch of Lumia specific apps such as Hero Maps and the Lumia Camera and Lumia Selfie apps. And there's a whole bunch of Microsoft apps as well, such as Bing News and Bing Sports and a couple other things like Skype. Coming to media, watching videos on the 5-inch screen of the Lumia 535 is actually pretty good. There's support for a whole bunch of formats as well, though the screen is really low resolution. And like I said, you will want to keep wiping that screen to keep it clean. There's also Microsoft's Xbox Video and Xbox Music services. That's if you live in a country that is supported by those services. Personally, my favorite music solution on Windows Phone is the Mix Radio service, which is really cool. It allows you to download mixes to listen to free of cost, and you can stream music free of cost as well. The best feature though is that you can download these mixes to listen to them on the go. All in all, Mix Radio is one of my favorite services on any platform right now. Listening to music via headphones on the 535 is a decent enough experience. It doesn't get the Dolby features that the other more premium Lumia phones do get. I should also mention that the tiny loudspeaker at the back is pretty decent. The positioning of the speaker does mean that it gets very muffled when you place it on a flat surface, unfortunately. Alright, let's talk about the camera. Depending on where you are, you've probably noticed that Microsoft is marketing the Lumia 535 under a new 5x5x5 slogan. This of course refers to the 5-inch screen, the 5-inch front-facing camera, and the 5-inch rear camera as well. The wide-angle front-facing 5-megapixel camera is supposed to be the same camera that was used on the Lumia 730 as well. With focal length of 24mm and a f2.4 aperture, the selfie camera is pretty good in terms of quality. We can only record video at up to FWVGA resolution. It also happens to be fixed focus in case you're wondering. Still, image quality from the front-facing camera is pretty good, capturing a solid amount of detail in almost any scenario. If you're a big fan of taking selfies, you're going to be very happy with this camera. Of course, in low light situations, you'll see quite a bit bit of noise creep in because there is no front-facing LED flash. But hey, that's what the rear camera is for. The rear 5 megapixel camera is f2.4 aperture also and has a focal length of 28 millimeters. It does a decent job in daytime images, and the imaging algorithms tend to push color saturation, which kind of makes images look more vivid than they generally are in real life. That being said, pictures taken in low light situations are often dull and tend to have a lot of noise creep in. And just like the front-facing camera, the rear camera can only record video in FWVGA resolution. This is probably because of that Snapdragon 200 processor though. As always guys, I have a whole bunch of camera samples right over at UnleashThePhones.com in case you want a better idea of how the Lumia 535's cameras are. Alright, coming to call quality on the Lumia 535 was a pretty good experience. Voices came in very loud and clear and there were no issues with network reception either. I should note though that at full volume the earpiece does tend to distort a little bit. I also would not recommend depending on the loudspeaker at the back for phone calls. Coming to battery life, the Lumia 535 is powered by a 1905 mAh battery. That's a lot more than the 1430 mAh battery used on the Lumia 530. Of course, in this case you do get a much larger screen as well. Still, battery life on the Lumia 535 is pretty good and I was able to get almost 2 days worth of moderate usage out of this phone. Under heavy usage, you'd still be able to get back home at the end of the day with some battery life left. In this day and age, that's pretty good battery life. Alright, to conclude, the Lumia 535 is everything the Lumia 530 should have been. In fact, I don't even think the Lumia 530 should have existed at all. Still, that being said, the Lumia 535 isn't that same great hardware at an affordable price thing that the Lumia 520 was when it launched last year. I do feel like the price that the Lumia 535 is selling in India is a bit high, but there really aren't any better alternatives at the same price range either. There's the Xiaomi Redmi Note, which is incredible value for money at the same price, but is a little hard to get a hold of. There's also the Xiaomi Redmi 1S, which isn't sold in India anymore, unfortunately. Of course, there's also various Android One phones that are also sold here in India, but they all have their own pros and cons, unfortunately. The only real close competitor, in my opinion, is the Moto E. The Moto E offers similar hardware at a much cheaper price, though it doesn't have as good cameras as the Lumia 535 does. So your choice is going to have to be whether you want a better front-facing camera and a Windows phone versus a stock Android phone that has arguably more apps. Personally, I would save up and buy a Lumia 730 instead because this is still my favorite Windows phone of the year so far. That being said, I'd still recommend the Lumia 535 over the Lumia 630, and I'd definitely recommend it over the Lumia 530. At the end of the day, the Lumia 535 is a nice, affordable Windows phone. It boasts a large screen, a great front-facing camera for selfies. Performance is not 100% smooth, but it's still better than any other Android phone at the same price range. So while it's not quite the best budget smartphone of the year, it's still a phone that's worth checking out. So that's what I think about the Nokia Lumia 535, guys. As always, if you guys have any questions, let me know right in the comment section below, or check out the detailed written review over at UnleashThePhones.com. And as always, if you like this video, maybe hit the like button and maybe subscribe because that would be appreciated. And that's about it. Thanks for watching, guys.